Today, we're talking again about lead service lines, pipes that deliver water to homes, businesses, and schools in many American cities and towns and have emerged as one of the greatest public health challenges of our time. Colleen Heath is an environmental engineer who's passionate about preventing lead from infiltrating drinking water. I want to ask her, how should cities and towns approach how they sample and search for lead exceedances under the new EPA rules? Colleen, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
So the revised lead and copper rule enhances, shall we say, the traditional 15 parts per billion limit with a 10 parts per billion trigger level. How do you see that new trigger level impacting the communities that you've worked with and others around the country?
So the big change with the 10 parts per billion trigger level is kind of a catalyst for planning corrosion reoptimization projects, as well as developing your lead service line replacement program. You'll be required to replace at an annual rate. So even though the 10 parts per billion trigger level won't require a lead service line replacement, it really does force the water supplier to start to address the lead service line issues experienced in the water system.
So the EPA now requires that a sampler must draw 4 liters of water and collect that 5th liter test sample so that you're getting water that's more likely to come from the lead service line and not the internal plumbing of the building. What do water utilities need to keep in mind when approaching sampling under the new protocol?
So this is going to be a much bigger burden on the samples. So as you're familiar with, these samples are usually collected by volunteers, usually just residents in the community that have been identified as either having lead service line or are impacted with lead in another way. Going from having 1 liter sample bottle that they're required to collect, they will now need to collect 5. So that 1st liter will still be collected, and that's for copper analysis, the other portion of the rule. And then what we're recommending is filling liter bottles 2, 3, and 4, and then that 5th is, the sample that is going to be required for analysis.
As water systems develop their inventories or search for lead in their systems and get a better sense of where the lead may be, my understanding is that the sampling sites may need to change, and they may need to start doing some sampling in places that they haven't been before, or not doing sampling in places where they may be accustomed to doing it. How do you see that impacting water systems, and what do they need to keep in mind in this realm?
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Andrew. As water suppliers work through their lead service line inventory, it's likely that they're going to identify lead, but also the rule has reclassified what we call sampling tiers, so what sites should be sampled and in what order. And so there's really a renewed focus on sampling at sites with lead whenever possible. So, identifying more lead might shift out sites that previously were on the list that were copper with lead solder. But the other difference is galvanized surfaces are now considered a more likely source of lead than copper with lead solder. So those are being prioritized over copper. With these changes, it's likely that some new sites will come in and some old sites that might have had willing residents will come off the list.
Absolutely. Colleen, this has been an awesome discussion. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. This was fun.
Water utility leaders, is your system ready to meet EPA's revised lead and copper rule? CDM Smith's put together a readiness compliance checklist that lists everything you need to do to prepare. So hit the link below to download it for free and get your organization on track. For more conversations with brilliant folks like Colleen, please subscribe to our channel. We're putting out these videos regularly with some of the smartest people in the industry taking on some of the biggest challenges in the environment and infrastructure.